It was the 5th anniversary of my husband Richard's passing, a day that always felt heavy. I'd driven over to my daughter Susan's house, bringing a box of old photo albums. My hope was to spend the evening sharing memories of her father, maybe laughing and crying a little together. For me, keeping his memory alive was everything. But when Susan opened the door, her face was a mask of irritation. "Oh, it's today," she said flatly, not even making eye contact. I'd forgotten. "Happy anniversary, sweetie," I said, my voice softer than I intended, holding up the heavy box. "I thought we could look through these. Remember your dad." Susan let out a long, weary sigh, as if my presence was the greatest chore imaginable. "Mom, can we not do this today?" she said, finally looking at me. "I have a million things to do." We were standing in the beautiful entryway of her home, a home I'd helped them secure with a $70,000 down payment from my retirement savings, money I had scrimped and saved for decades, working as a school librarian. "You know, Mom," Susan began, her voice taking on a chillingly calm tone she'd perfected over the years. "I was thinking about Dad this morning, and I was thinking about what would really honor his memory." I felt a flicker of hope. "Of course, honey. Whatever you want to do, we can do it. A donation to his favorite charity? A visit to his favorite park?" Susan looked me dead in the eye, and the coldness there pierced my soul. It was a look of pure, unadulterated resentment. "The best way to honor Dad," she said, her words slow and deliberate, "would be for you to just join him." The world tilted. My heart felt like it had been physically seized and crushed in my chest. Her words just hung in the air, echoing. My daughter, my sweet little girl, had just wished me dead as a way to honor her father. "What? What did you say?" I stammered, the photo albums suddenly feeling like they weighed 1,000 pounds. "You heard me," she said, her voice unwavering. "I'm just so tired, Mom. Tired of you always needing something, always wanting to remember, always making everything so dramatic. My life would be so much less stressful if you would just be at peace." My hands started to tremble, and I nearly dropped the box. 70 years on this earth, 42 of them as her mother, and not once had I imagined such cruelty could come from her lips. "Susan," I whispered through a wave of tears, "I'm your mother. I gave you everything I had. I sacrificed so much for you." "Exactly," she shot back, stepping aside to let me in, though it felt more like a dismissal. "And you never let me forget it. It's suffocating. I can't live my life with you constantly reminding me of what I owe you. I need to be free." The photo albums were still in my arms, a testament to a past that now felt like a lie. All my dreams for this day, a quiet evening of remembrance, were gone. "But honey," I pleaded, "I just want to be part of your life. You and the boys are all I have." "And that's the problem," she exclaimed, her arms crossed tightly. "The fact that we're all you have. You need to get your own life and stop meddling in mine." I stumbled back toward the door, my legs weak, carrying the box that now felt like a coffin of my memories. "I can't believe you're saying this," I murmured. "After everything." "Everything?" She let out a short, sarcastic laugh. "Mom, everything you did was to make yourself feel important, to control my life. Well, I'm not your little project anymore." I turned at the doorway, my last shred of hope searching her face for any sign of remorse, any trace of the girl I raised. But all I saw was impatience. She was waiting for me to leave so she could get on with her day, unburdened by my grief. "I'll honor your father in my own way then," I said quietly, and walked out, closing her front door behind me. I didn't know it then, but it was the last time I would ever stand on that doorstep as the mother who gave everything, because Susan had just done something she would never have expected. She had set me free. I drove home to my small condo, my vision blurred by tears. The box of photos ended up on the floor of my hall closet, unopened. I collapsed onto my couch, The very one where I'd rocked Susan to sleep, read her countless stories, and celebrated every one of her achievements. How did it come to this? How could the child I'd nurtured wish me away with such venom? My mind started to rewind, cataloging every sacrifice over the last 42 years. When she was 5 and broke her arm falling from a tree, I worked night shifts for 6 months to pay the $3,000 hospital bill my insurance wouldn't fully cover. I sold my own father's watch to make the last payment. When she was 17 and desperate to go on a school trip to France, I took on a weekend job at a bookstore for a year to save the $5,000 she needed. I remember the joy on her face when I handed her the tickets. "Oh, Mom, you're the greatest!" she'd squealed, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. When she went to college and decided to switch her major twice, I never once complained about the extra tuition. $55,000 in total, money I got by cashing in the retirement bonds Richard and I had so carefully accumulated. "Don't you worry, sweetie," I'd tell her. "Your future is the most important thing." When she married Mark, I paid for the wedding, a beautiful $40,000 affair at a country club, because she deserved her fairy tale day. "I want my girl to have the best of everything," I'd told myself as I drained my savings account. And then, the house. The very one she had just thrown me out of. When Susan and Mark were struggling to get a mortgage, I didn't hesitate. I gave them $70,000 for the down payment, the last of my major savings. It was the money I had earmarked for my own future, for travel, for a comfortable old age. But that wasn't all. When her sons, Liam and Noah, were born, I became their full-time, unpaid nanny. Every time Susan wanted a date night, a weekend away, a girls' trip, I was there. I rearranged my life to fit her needs, happy to give my daughter the freedom I never had. When Mark was laid off 2 years ago, who covered their mortgage for 6 months? Me. $18,000 from my pension fund. Money that meant I ate soup for dinner most nights just to make ends meet. And when both boys needed extensive dental work, another $6,000 that I paid for without a second thought. "Don't worry," I'd told them, seeing their panicked faces. "That's what grandmas are for." I got up and went to the old wooden chest where I kept all my financial records. Box after box of receipts and statements, a paper trail of my devotion. I started adding it all up. Raising Susan, an estimated $250,000. College, $55,000. The wedding, $40,000. The house down payment, $70,000. The mortgage payments, $18,000. The dental work, $6,000. The endless gifts, clothes, and extras over the years, at least another $20,000. The grand total was staggering, over $450,000. Nearly $500,000 poured into my daughter's life, and my return on investment was a death wish. The tears fell onto the bank statements. If I had invested that money, even conservatively, I'd have over $700,000 today. I could be living in a beautiful home on the coast, traveling, enjoying the retirement Richard and I had planned, instead of living pension check to pension check in this tiny condo. I had invested in my daughter's love. I had believed that every sacrifice was a deposit into a bank of familial affection, one I could draw on in my old age. What a fool I'd been. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. I had to hear her voice one more time, to know if she really, truly meant it. "What now, Mom?" she answered, her voice dripping with annoyance. "Susan, I just need to know if you meant what you said earlier," I asked, my own voice trembling. "Of course I meant it," she said, without a shred of regret. "Mom, you need to accept that I have my own life. Your constant neediness isn't healthy for either of us." Neediness. She called a mother's love neediness. "Yes, that's what it is. And I hope after today you'll finally give me the space I've been asking for." I hung up. There was no room for doubt. My daughter saw my love as a disease, my presence as an infestation she needed to eradicate. That night, sleep was impossible. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every "I love you, Mom" she had ever uttered. Was it all an act? Or had I simply created a monster of entitlement, so blinded by her own wants that she couldn't see the woman who had given them to her? Around 4 a.m., something shifted inside me. The deep, aching sadness began to curdle into something else. It turned into a cold, hard anger. I had been used. My daughter wanted me to join her father. Fine, it was time to grant her wish. I woke the next morning with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in decades. The grief had been replaced by a steely resolve. If Susan wanted me gone from her life, I would oblige, but I would do it on my terms. I put on my nicest suit and walked out the door. First stop, the bank. I had a joint savings account with Susan, one I'd set up for family emergencies. It held $25,000, money I'd deposited just in case they ever needed it. "Good morning, Carol," said Mr. Harris, the bank manager who had known me for 20 years. "What can we do for you?" "I'd like to close joint account number 77291B, I said, my voice firm, "and transfer the entire balance to my personal checking account." "Are you sure?" he asked, peering at his computer. "That account has a balance of $25,000. "Perfectly sure," I replied, signing the form with a steady hand. Watching that money slide back into my sole possession was a small, satisfying victory, but it was just the start. Next, I went to the county records office. Years ago, when Mark's business was failing, I had co-signed on a home equity loan for them. It meant if they defaulted, the bank would come after me. But it also gave me certain legal rights to their property. "I need to see the file for the property at 124 Maple Drive," I told the clerk. While she retrieved it, I remembered the day I'd signed those papers. Susan had wept with gratitude. "You saved us, Mom. We would have lost everything without you." Mark had promised they would be diligent with payments. "Here you go," the clerk said, handing me the thick file. As a co-signer, I was on the hook for the debt, but the fine print also stated that in the event of financial instability from the primary borrowers, the co-signer could petition to take over the asset to protect their investment. Perfect. Susan had told me last month that Mark's new business was already struggling, that they'd missed a credit card payment. She thought she was confiding in me, asking for a future bailout. What she was really doing was handing me the ammunition I needed. I left with copies of every document. My final stop of the day was my lawyer, Ben Carter, an old friend of Richard's. He knew my family inside and out. "Carol," he said, ushering me in, "it's been too long. What's on your mind?" I told him everything, every last gut-wrenching word. I told him about the years of financial support and the cold, cruel dismissal. Ben listened in stunned silence, his face growing grimmer by the second. "Carol," he said when I finished, "I am so deeply sorry. I never would have imagined Susan could be capable of such a thing." "Neither did I whispered. "But she's made her wishes clear. I want to change my will. Immediately." Ben's eyebrows shot up. "I want Susan's name removed from everything. I want to set up a trust for my grandsons, Liam and Noah, that they can't touch until they are 25, and which Susan has no control over. The rest of my estate I want to leave to the City Library's Children's Literacy Program." "It can be done," Ben said, already taking notes. "What about your life insurance policy?" "Change the beneficiary. Anything that has Susan's name on it needs to go. My daughter wants me gone. When I am, she won't get a dime." We spent 2 hours going over everything: my $150,000 life insurance, my condo, my investments. Everything that was once destined for Susan would now go to charity. "There's one more thing," I said as we were wrapping up. "I want you to prepare the paperwork to make a claim on the house at 124 Maple Drive. As the co-signer on their second mortgage, I have rights, and her husband's business is failing again." Ben's eyes gleamed with understanding. "So that's the plan. Are you sure you want to take it this far?" "Absolutely," I said, my voice like ice. "My daughter said her life would be easier if I was gone. Well, I'm going to be gone. But first, She's going to learn what it's like to live without the mother she threw away. I left Ben's office as the sun was setting. I felt lighter than I had in years. For 42 years, my life had revolved around Susan. My dreams had been put on hold for hers. Not anymore. I went home and opened a bottle of wine, something I hadn't done since Richard was alive. I toasted myself, a strange but liberating feeling. Then I picked up my phone and called a number I'd seen in a retirement magazine. "Good evening, sun-kissed senior living in Florida," a cheerful voice answered. "My name is Carol Peterson," I said. "I saw your advertisement for long-term rentals. Could you send me all the information?" "Of course, Mrs. Peterson. Florida is a wonderful place to start a new chapter. What are you looking for?" "Everything," I said. "I want to know everything about how a 70-year-old woman can start a brand new life in the sun." After the call, I looked out my window at the city I'd lived in my whole life. Soon, it would just be a memory. Susan had asked me to join her father, and I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Her wish was about to become her biggest regret. The following days were a whirlwind of secret activity. Each morning, I woke with a strange mix of sorrow and exhilaration. I was mourning the daughter I thought I had, but celebrating the woman I was finally becoming. On Wednesday, the phone rang. It was Susan. For a fleeting second, my heart leaped. Maybe she was calling to apologize. How foolish I was. "Mom," she said, her tone clipped and businesslike. "I need a favor." "No hello, no how are you. Just a demand." "What is it?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "The boys have a soccer tournament all weekend, and Mark and I were invited to a last-minute getaway with his boss. Can you take them from Friday to Sunday?" The audacity was breathtaking. The same daughter who wished me dead was now asking me to be her free weekend babysitter, as if her cruel words had never been spoken. "No, I can't," I said simply. There was a pause. "What do you mean you can't?" she asked, genuinely shocked. She had never heard that word from me before. "I have other plans," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "What plans could you have?" she scoffed, her tone dripping with condescension, as if a 70-year-old woman couldn't possibly have a life. "Plans that don't concern you," I replied evenly. "You'll have to find someone else." "But Mom, all the good sitters are booked. And you've never said no before. They're your own grandsons." The emotional blackmail that had always worked before. But the strings were cut. "That was before you told me the best way to honor my late husband was for me to die," I said coldly. "If you want me out of your life, then I'm out. That includes the free services." There was a long, stunned silence. Then, a dry laugh. "Oh my God, you're actually serious. You're going to hold that over my head like a child." "It's not a tantrum, Susan. It's a consequence. You wanted me gone. I'm gone." "Fine," she snapped. "Be that way. But don't come crawling back to me when you're old and lonely." And she hung up. Each word she spoke was another brick in the wall she was building between us, and another stepping stone on my path to freedom. That afternoon, I went back to the bank and withdrew $20,000 of my savings in cash. This was my escape fund, the money I'd need to set up my new life in Florida. I then called the rental agency and secured a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a vibrant senior community, sight unseen. The deposit was $3,000, which I paid over the phone without a moment's hesitation. It was the best money I had ever spent. On Thursday, my neighbor Margaret knocked on my door. She was a kind widow of 75, and we'd become good friends over the years. "Carol," she said, sitting at my kitchen table. "You seem different this week, brighter. Is everything all right?" Margaret had seen it all. She'd seen me cancel our coffee dates to go watch Susan's kids. She'd seen me coming home exhausted after a weekend of playing nanny. She knew. So I told her. I told her what Susan had said, and I told her about my plan. "Oh, my dear Lord," Margaret whispered, her eyes filling with tears. How could she say such a thing? After everything you've done. The worst part, Maggie, is that she meant it. She sees me as a burden to be discarded. And you're really moving to Florida? Yes, I said firmly. The ticket is booked. I leave on Tuesday. Margaret reached across the table and took my hands. Good for you, Carol. You have my full support. What that girl did is a sin. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I need your help. I want Susan to think, for a little while, that I've truly joined Richard. I laid out the rest of the plan. Margaret would be the one to discover my empty apartment and the letter I was going to leave for Susan. It's perfect, Margaret said, a spark in her eye. That ungrateful child needs a wake-up call she'll never forget. Will you do it? Oh, I'll do it. I was in my college drama club. This will be my finest performance. That evening, I sat down to write the most important letter of my life, the one Susan would find. I chose my words with surgical precision. My dearest Susan, it began. You said the best way to honor your father was for me to join him. After much thought, I've decided to grant your wish. When you read this, I will be gone. I have started the new life I should have started years ago, instead of dedicating mine to you. I wrote for hours, detailing every sacrifice, every dollar spent, every dream deferred. Not to be bitter, but to be clear. I wanted her to see the full, unvarnished truth of what she had thrown away. Enclosed with this letter, you will find copies of several legal documents, I continued. You will find my new will, which leaves you nothing. You will find the notice of closure for our joint account. You will find the legal notice that, as co-signer of your home equity loan, I am exercising my rights due to your current financial instability. And finally, you will find the cancellation notice for the life insurance policy I held in your name. It was a 20-page document, a meticulous accounting of her loss. Your life will be much less stressful without me, the letter concluded. But it will also be much, much poorer. I hope it was worth it. On Friday night, while I was packing, my phone rang. It was Susan. I ignored it. She called twice more. I let it go to voicemail. There was nothing more to say. The next morning, it was Mark at my door. He looked stressed. Carol, he said, Susan told me about your fight. I know she can be difficult, but please, you can't just cut us off. Cut you off? I asked, feigning ignorance. You're our safety net. The boys adore you. We need you. How funny. When I was an inconvenience, Susan wanted me dead. Now that the bank of Mom was closing, I was suddenly needed. Mark, I said calmly, your wife was perfectly clear. My presence is suffocating her. I am simply respecting her wishes. But Carol, you know how she gets. She didn't mean it like that. Oh, she did, I said, my voice unwavering. She sounded quite sincere when she suggested I die to honor her father. Mark had the decency to look ashamed. He knew he couldn't defend her. Please, he said, just give us a chance to make it right. I'll talk to her. It's far too late for that, I replied, gently closing the door. Kiss the boys for me. Sunday was my final day in the city. I spent it visiting all the places that held memories of a different life. The library where I worked, the park where Richard and I had our first date, the hospital where Susan was born. It was a quiet goodbye to the woman I used to be. On Monday, my new life would begin. I couldn't sleep that night, not from sadness, but from a giddy sense of anticipation I hadn't felt since I was a girl. At 70 years old, I was about to embark on my greatest adventure. At 5 a.m. on Monday, Margaret was at my door with a thermos of coffee and a conspiratorial smile. Ready for the great escape? She asked. More than ready, I replied, pulling my 2 suitcases into the hall. You have the letter and the keys? Right here, she said, holding them up. And I've rehearsed my lines. The plan was set. Margaret would wait until Wednesday, then call Susan in a panic, claiming she hadn't seen me in days. She would then go to Susan's house to deliver the letter and the documents, explaining she'd used her spare key to enter my apartment and found it empty. She would be the one to tell Susan that I was, for all intents and purposes, gone forever. "Remember," I said as the taxi pulled up, "you have to sound frantic. Tell her you called the hospitals and the police." "Don't you worry, Carol. I'll give an Oscar-worthy performance," Margaret promised with a wink. The taxi arrived right at 6:00 a.m. As my suitcases were loaded, I took one last glance at the condo. I had lived there for 20 years, but I felt no sadness, only relief. It was like escaping a prison of my own making. "To the airport?" the driver asked. "To the airport," I confirmed, the words tasting like freedom. During the ride, I thought about all I was leaving behind. My routines, my friends, the constant, draining worry over Susan's life. But then I thought about what lay ahead. The sun, the sea, the freedom to be just Carol. At the airport, I got 2 calls from Susan, which I ignored. A text followed. "Mom, this is childish. The boys are asking for you. Call me." I deleted it. It was amazing how much she needed me now that I was no longer at her beck and call. The flight to Florida was smooth and quiet. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was completely unreachable. No one could ask me for anything. It was a heady, wonderful feeling. During the flight, I wrote in a new journal, documenting the whirlwind of the past week. I wanted to remember every detail of how I had reclaimed my life. I arrived in Fort Myers that afternoon. A car from the retirement community was waiting for me, the driver holding a sign with my name on it. "Mrs. Peterson," he greeted me with a warm smile. "Welcome to Florida. I hope you're ready for your new life." "More than ready," I replied, and for the first time in a very long time, my smile felt real. The community was beautiful. My apartment was bright and airy, with a screened-in porch, or lanai as they called it, overlooking a small lake. A welcome basket with fruit and information about local activities sat on the counter. That night, I slept for 10 hours straight. There was no phone to wake me, no one needing me, no obligations except to myself. On Wednesday morning, I woke up, made coffee, and sat on my lanai watching the exotic birds by the lake. I went for a walk and explored the community clubhouse. I spent $150 on a new, colorful wardrobe, just because I could. As I walked back to my apartment, I thought about Susan. I calculated that by now, Margaret would be at her house, delivering the news. I sat on my new couch and waited. I knew it wouldn't be long. My phone would soon begin to ring, and Susan would finally understand what it really meant to lose a mother. At 3 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Susan. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. On the 4th try, I answered. "Mom!" she shrieked, her voice frantic. "Where are you? Margaret was just here. She gave me this letter. She said you're gone." "Hello, Susan," I said calmly, watching a graceful heron land by the lake. "Did you read it all?" "Yes, I read it. Are you out of your mind? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I am precisely where I need to be," I said. "Far away from you. It's what you wanted, remember? But I didn't mean like this. I didn't mean for you to actually leave. I was just having a bad day." There it was. The classic excuse. Minimize the hurt and make me the villain for reacting to it. A bad day? You wished me dead, Susan. You don't say that to someone on a bad day. I was just stressed. Mark's business isn't doing well. The kids are a handful. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. You're right. You shouldn't have. But you did. And now we are here. But Mom, please, you have to come back. We need you. I need you. How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she'd seen the legal documents. Now that her financial safety net had been incinerated. Do you need me, Susan? Or do you need my money? I asked directly. There was a telling silence on the line. I need you. she finally whispered, but it was hollow, unconvincing. Susan, for 42 years, my world revolved around you. I gave up my dreams, my money, my time. And when I needed to feel valued, you told me to die. Those words shattered something in me that can never be repaired. I'm sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. Sorry isn't a magic word, Susan. The damage is done. And you know what? Your cruelty was a gift. It woke me up. It made me realize I've been living my life completely wrong. What are you talking about? I mean that for the first time in my adult life, I am living for myself, and it is glorious. Where are you, Mom? Please, she begged, her voice thick with tears. The boys, they're asking where Grandma is. They don't understand. Now she was using my grandsons against me. For years, I was just the convenient, free nanny. Now that I was gone, I was the beloved, missed Grandma. The boys will be fine, I said, my gaze fixed on the peaceful horizon. They are young, but they will learn a valuable lesson from this, that words have power, and that you can't treat people you claim to love like they are disposable. But Mom, what if something happens to you? What if you're alone and you get sick? Her concern was about a decade too late. Susan, in the last 5 years, I was hospitalized twice for heart palpitations brought on by stress. Do you remember visiting me? Once, for 10 minutes, because you had a hair appointment you couldn't miss. So please, don't pretend you're suddenly worried about my health. The silence was my confirmation. She remembered. I didn't think it was that serious, she stammered. Of course not. My problems were never a priority, but my bank account was. It's not about the money, she yelled. It's about you. I miss you. Do you miss me, or do you miss the services I provided? I hung up before she could answer. The phone immediately started ringing again. This time, I turned it off. I needed to enjoy my first evening of true, untethered freedom. That night, I went to a local seafood restaurant by myself. I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, grilled grouper for $50, and a glass of crisp white wine. I hadn't indulged like that in years, always thinking the money could be better used for one of Susan's emergencies. The next day, Thursday, I turned my phone back on. 38 missed calls, 19 text messages, all from Susan and Mark. The tone of the messages was a fascinating case study in desperation. The first few, please, Mom, call us. We're worried sick. The next few, if you don't call back, we're reporting you as a missing person. Then came the truth. The bank called. You closed the emergency account. How are we supposed to pay for the new tires Mark needs? And finally, it was a beautiful progression from feigned concern for my well-being to sheer panic over their financial predicament. I decided to send a single reply. I am safe and well. Do not contact me again. The response was instantaneous. You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to destroy this family. Ben Carter's office called. He says you can take our house. There it was. The real fear. She wasn't worried I was hurt or alone. She was terrified of losing her lifestyle. I replied, now you're starting to understand what my presence in your life was worth. A shame you had to lose it to see it. That afternoon, I met with a financial planner in my new community. He was a kind, professional man who helped me map out my future. With your pension and your assets, he explained, you can live here very comfortably for the rest of your life. Florida has excellent healthcare options for seniors, and the cost of living is manageable. For the first time, I talked about my finances without the shadow of Susan's needs hanging over me. It was incredibly liberating to plan a budget based solely on my own wants and desires. You can also invest a portion of your savings, he continued. In 10 years, you could have a very significant nest egg. A nest egg. For me. Not for my daughter's next crisis. I left his office feeling powerful and in control. On Friday morning, I joined a water aerobics class. There were about 20 other women, all in their 60s and 70s, laughing and splashing in the pool. During the class, I started talking to a woman named Linda, a 72-year-old from New York. "What brought you down to Florida?" she asked me. "My daughter told me the best way to honor her dead father was for me to join him," I said, deciding there was no point in sugarcoating it. Linda's eyes went wide. "You're kidding." "Not in the slightest. After I paid for her wedding, her house down payment, and raised her kids for free, she told me my presence in her life was stressful." "Oh, honey," Linda murmured. "So what did you do?" I took her advice. I disappeared, and here I am. Linda broke into a wide grin. "You are my hero. It took me 3 years to get up the courage to leave my situation. My son treated me like a walking, talking ATM. For the rest of the morning, Linda and I traded stories. Her son and daughter-in-law only ever called when they wanted money for a new car or a fancy vacation. When she finally said no, they cut her off from her grandkids. "It was emotional blackmail, plain and simple," Linda said as we dried off by the pool. "For a while, the guilt was eating me alive. I thought I was a bad mother, but then I realized they never once asked if I was happy or if I had enough to live on. They just cared about what they could get from me. That's not love, Carol. That's parasitism." Her words struck me like a thunderbolt. For decades, I had mistaken emotional dependency for love and constant demands for genuine need. That night, I turned on my phone again. 57 missed calls, 42 texts. The evolution continued. The first few were still pleading. "Mom, please, the boys are crying." Then, the financial reality set in. The bank sent a letter about the home equity loan. They said, "Since you're making a claim, we have 30 days to respond. We can't lose our house over a fight." By day 5, the messages were angry. "This is insane, Mom. You're ruining our lives because your feelings got hurt. Grow up." And then finally, a crack in the facade. "I called the police and hospitals. No one knows anything. If you're hurt, it's my fault. Please, just let me know you're okay." It was stunning. Not once did she say, "I am sorry for wishing you were dead." Not once did she acknowledge the profound cruelty of her words. It was all about how my actions were affecting her. I sent one last text message. "I am perfectly happy and healthier than I have been in years. You are now experiencing the natural consequences of your own words and actions. I hope you learn from this." Her reply was immediate. "We can fix this, Mom. I swear I'll never say anything like that again. Just come home." I typed my final reply to her. "Promises mean nothing when the trust is gone. You showed me who you are, Susan. Believe me, I heard you." After sending it, I blocked her number. I blocked Mark's number. It was time. The chapter was closed. On Monday, I signed the final paperwork for my new apartment, making it my permanent home. I also arranged for my pension to be direct deposited into my new Florida bank account and hired a realtor to sell my condo back home. My new life was taking root. That afternoon, I got a call from Margaret. "Carol, you won't believe this," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "Susan showed up at my door yesterday, sobbing, begging me to tell her where you are." "What did you say?" "I told her the truth. I said what she did was unforgivable and that if I were in your shoes, I'd have vanished too. You should have seen her face when she realized the whole neighborhood probably knows how she treated you." "Did she mention the money?" I asked. "Oh, did she ever? She said without you, they can't afford the mortgage, that Mark can't find a decent job, and that the boys need new clothes for school. She's finally realizing that her entire lifestyle was funded by you." It was just as I suspected. She didn't miss me. She missed my wallet. "Margaret," I told her, "from now on, if anyone asks, just tell them that Carol Peterson is gone." And in a way, it's true. The woman who lived her life for an ungrateful daughter died a week ago. "I understand completely," Margaret said. And you know what? It's the best thing that ever happened to her. I hope you enjoyed this part of my story. It's amazing how a single moment can change everything, isn't it? If you want to hear what happened next, make sure you're subscribed and have that little notification bell turned on, because I have a new story to share every single day. I can't wait to see you back here tomorrow.